Mr. President, great to see you. We've just had the Democrat convention. You're up next week.
Right.
A lot of the commentary on the Democrats' convention was that it was very negative. It was very much attacking
It was dark.
Trump.
It was dark.
Right.
I agree.
What are we going to see from your party next week?
Well, I think we're going to see something that is going to be very uplifting and positive. That's what I'd like it to be. I think you have to defend yourself by talking about some of the lies, like when he says Social Security. I don't think he knows too much about Social Security. Basically, he said he's not going to give the big tax reduction that we're giving for people, which is a lot of money, and you have to do that. You need some stimulus during this period of time. The economy is roaring back. It's coming back. We're going to be talking about the economy. We're going to be talking about the military, what we've done and where we're going, because we need strong military. They don't want to have a strong military.
But those are I just wanted to get a sense from you. What's the overall message?
I think it's positive.
Why should people vote for you?
Yeah, I think the overall is going to be a very positive as opposed to a dark, a very, very positive message. And positive on the economy. We're going to have a great year next year. You know, people find it hard to believe. You've seen the numbers. They all said, oh, we're not going to have a V. Well, the way we're going, we're going to have a super V. And we haven't even gotten the additional stimulus that the Democrats should have approved, and they probably will, because I think they have a lot of political pressure. But no, I think it's going to be a very, very positive message.
You've talked a lot about getting back to where we were.
Right.
The great economy, the facts are there on that. People can see that. And they experienced it. But what do you want to get done if you're re-elected in the next 4 years that you weren't able to do in the first?
I'd love to see school choice education-wise. It takes care of itself. It's the ultimate thing. I believe you're a fan of school choice, but the Democrats are totally not.
Well, most importantly, parents are.
Well,
they know that it's better for their children.
The parents are. And so school choice is one thing. Education is very simple, school choice. And let the parent go and decide. And also, for instance, if they're going to close these schools, I just left Pennsylvania, the whole state is closed up. North Carolina, they have it all closed up. By the way, their numbers aren't any better than other states. In many cases, they're worse. But you'll probably open up everything on November 4th. Anything they can to make the economy as bad as possible. But they're having a hard time with it because the numbers are so good.
So what can you do at the federal level? Because a lot of that school, you know, the money and the way it's run, it's done at the state and local level. What could you do as president?
Well, one of the things I did, which nobody ever talks about, is I saved the historically black colleges and universities. They were in big trouble, and I saved them. Nobody wants to talk about that. President Obama did not do it, and Biden didn't do it, and people didn't do it. So I think that's an important thing. At least I can say it, because we get no credit, and we should get a little credit for doing certain things. We are working with every educational group in the country. We are working on our schools. We want very, very strong, and you know, I've been very, very strong on choice, and we've got a lot of choice going. But this is where we can get students to, instead of failing horrible schools, where you see some of the statistics in New York where, I mean, people can barely read after they get out of high school. They can't pass the simplest of tests. So education's a big factor. It's going to be a big factor for me.
So let's talk about the economy and China. And I want to put those subjects together because so much of what went wrong with the economy, which you ran on in 2016, was the fact that the jobs went to China and so on. As you look ahead to the next 4 years, if you're re-elected, what's going to be your overall attitude towards China?
Okay, well, look back for the last 3.5 years. I'm the only one that ever took on China. And you saw the intelligence reports where they say China is working hard to get Joe Biden elected. If he gets elected, China will own our country. I've taken billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars in taxes out of China. I gave them to our farmers because they targeted wrongly our farmers. They thought that would put pressure on me. They could get whatever they wanted. So they target us, and it's no good. So if you look at what we've done with China, nobody's ever done to China.
Are you going to be tougher in the next 4 years with China? A lot of people, I've been one of them, that said, you know, why are we there at all? Why don't we disengage? Why don't we bring...
Decouple.
Exactly. What do you
So, look, I don't want to set the world on fire right now on your wonderful show, which I watch all the time, okay? But I made a great deal with China. You see that. They're buying billions and billions of dollars of, you know, manufactured goods, but also our farmers, more than they've ever done. But with all of that being said, it's no longer the same to me. It's no longer the same. There's been no country that's ripped us off more than China. And by the way, the European Union is no beauty either, okay? They treat us terribly too. But there's been no country that has ripped us off like China for many, many years, for decades, where we'd lose anywhere from $200 billion to $500 billion, with a B, $billion a year. We rebuilt China. I give them all the credit because they were smarter than our presidents and smarter than our representatives. But I've stopped it. They had the worst year they've had in 67 years. This was the worst year. Prior to the plague coming in, they had the worst year, and we had the best.
But it sounds like in the future, I mean, your team has shared with me the key policy points of your second-term agenda. There's a lot to talk about there. One of them is about bringing back jobs, even more than before, and incentives for American companies.
But you're asking an even more interesting question. Would you decouple? Okay, that's what you're really asking. Would you decouple? That's a very interesting question, because so far we've gotten nothing out of China.
I was going to ask you that. What do we get out of it?
We get nothing. All we do is lose money.
Right.
I said the easiest money, I said to people, you want to make money, decouple from China, $500 billion. We lose billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. We get nothing from China. Yeah, we get some goods that we could produce ourselves, okay?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because, I mean, I've talked about this. There's no country in the world is better placed to move towards self-sufficiency than America.
It's true. It's true.
But do you like the sound of moving in that direction?
Well, I have been doing that. That's why I put tariffs on China. You know, when I put 25% tariffs on China, we got a lot of business back. When I put the 25, that's a lot. A 25% tariff is a lot. When I put the tariffs on China, that's why we got so much of our business back. We took a lot of, we were doing phenomenally. We were doing better than we've ever done with China. And I was all set to rock and roll, and then we got hit with this damn situation. But, you know, you're asking a question, because you're asking two questions. Well, would you be tougher at this or that? But then you're asking a second question. Would you ever just decouple, not do business with China? Because, you know, we don't have to.
And what's the answer?
Well, it's something that if they don't treat us right, I would certainly.
Interesting.
I would certainly
I don't think you'd hear that from Joe Biden. That is a big contrast.
China owns Joe Biden. His son got $1.5 billion. His son with no experience, no brain power, no anything, never did it. Not only Ukraine, he got hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from Ukraine and a $3 million upfront payment. And then with China, he walks out with $1.5 billion to manage. That means millions of dollars a year in fees. It's ridiculous.
So
by the way, they own Joe Biden. They own him. And they want me to lose so badly. Probably only Iran would be in a case where they'd rather have me lose even more than China. And by the way, with Iran, I will have a deal done within the first 3 weeks. All they do, they just waited. They're desperate to make a deal. But they want to wait. And I even said, wait. They want to see what happens. But if Biden wins, they'll do another deal like they did with John Kerry, who's incompetent, and Barack Obama, who frankly is a deal maker, is incompetent. Look at the Middle East. Look at the deal I just made with UAE and with Israel. And now all the other countries want to be a part of it. You can end up with peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought we'd be in a position like this.
I just want to go back to China. There's a specific thing I wanted to get your reaction to, which is, it's an issue that's heating up in the relationship, Taiwan. In the past, there's been all sorts of different attitudes towards Taiwan from the US government. It seems to be getting more important because of the technology and the economic aspect. There's a company in Taiwan that's the world leader in semiconductors. It's a huge issue for industry around the world.
They're coming to this country.
Well, that's what I wanted. If China, and it looks like they're getting more and more belligerent, tries to either invade Taiwan or effectively take control of it and its important industries, would you let them get away with it?
I think it's an inappropriate place to talk about it. But China knows what I'm going to do. China knows. I think this is an inappropriate way to talk about it, though. You know, I don't want to say, yeah, I'm going to do this, or I'm not going to do this. It's just an inappropriate place to talk about it. It's a very big subject. It's a very powerful subject. But I think China understands what I'm going to be doing.
I'm speaking to you on a Friday morning. Last night we heard Joe Biden. I presume you were watching. What was your reaction?
I was. It's what he didn't say, and he got through the speech, and I thought he got through it in a very decent manner. It was the shortest speech they say ever made of its kind, so it was short. Didn't talk about law enforcement, didn't talk about what's happening in all these Democrat-run cities like Chicago, New York, Portland, and many others. I thought that would have been a big factor. Didn't talk about increasing everyone's taxes, didn't talk about there'll be no fracking, there'll be no oil, there'll be no fossil fuels, because he signed on to a deal which I call the manifesto with Bernie and the radical left. And under that deal, you're not going to have fossil fuel. You're not going to have things that we need for jobs, and we need to fuel our plants. And these massive plants are not going to work on wind. And he didn't talk about any of that. So I think if he's going to go with it, he's got to make a case for it. And I don't think you can make a case, so he didn't discuss it. But a very big thing was he didn't talk about police, the way they're treated, how badly they've been treated. And he didn't talk about law enforcement and those cities that have been so badly run.
So one thing he did say, a lot of people have been talking about it. He said he's going to lead America out of the darkness into the light. What did you make of that?
Well, I'll tell you, the truth is we were doing so good. We had the greatest economy ever in the world, not just here. This was our greatest economy prior to the China virus coming in. We had the greatest economy, Steve, as you know better than anybody, because I watch your show all the time, and you talk about it. And then it took a turn, whether it was me or anybody else. I mean, the whole world, 188 countries got infected. And we did great. I mean, we get zero credit. You know, what they're trying to do is make it all. We did great.
Well, actually, on that, there's a couple of falsehoods I spotted, probably more, but the two that stood out to me in his remarks.
Yes.
One of them was on the virus, where he said it was worse here in America than anywhere else in the world. What's your reaction to that?
We were far better than Europe. I mean, far better. We were far better than most other places. And if you take out New York, which was a disaster, and one or two other locations, I don't want to insult anybody by saying them, because it is their governor run. And we ended up making ventilators and not one person that needed a ventilator didn't get it, when you think of that. But you're right, he said the worst. And you take out New York and a couple of other places, practically, if you just take out New York, we had the best numbers of anybody. It was exactly the opposite. That was really a stone cold.
When you say the best numbers of anyone, what are you basing that on?
Well, I'm basing it on mortality. I'm basing it on just a lot of different statistics that I'm saying. New York was a disaster. It was very poorly done. The nursing home, the nursing homes lost. Now it comes out at least 11,000 people. That's Governor Cuomo. I don't know what he was doing, what he was thinking.
Well, now he's writing a book about it.
Yeah, he's writing a book. He's writing a book. But no, it was really an outright lie.
The other one, can I just ask for your reaction to, was it's very interesting. He was talking about your plan to cut payroll taxes and was saying that that will destroy people's social security. A lot of seniors watching would have been pretty frightened by that.
Terrible. It was a terrible statement. First of all, we're taking it out of the general fund and replacing it through the general fund. Nothing to do with Social Security. And the payroll tax
cut... So just to be clear, it's not true.
It's not true. It's a lie.
Your payroll tax cut plan will hurt anyone's Social Security.
It will have no impact on Social Security. We're taking it out of the general fund. It comes out of the general fund. If anything happened, we would replace it immediately. Look, I've been the one since the campaign, they were saying, oh, Social Security. You know, they like to talk about Medicare, Social Security, things that are good, and war. They said I'd be in a war within the first week. Well, guess what? We're out of our wars. We're almost out of Afghanistan. We're almost out of Iraq. We're bringing people back home. We have very, very few people left in those, and we call them, and you do too, the endless wars. But they like to say that. They also like to say Social Security. And I'm the one that's protecting Social Security because I've made our economy strong. But when you talk about darkness, we had the greatest economy ever. We were doing incredibly well. There was very little strife, and actually Democrats and Republicans were actually coming together, and then we got hit with the China virus, and we had to go into a different mode.
So let's talk about something that matters a lot to people watching, healthcare. What's your second-term agenda for the American people on healthcare?
Well, first of all, what we did with Obamacare is incredible. We got rid of the individual mandate, which was a horror show for people. It was horrible. It was killing them. Pre-existing conditions we keep 100%. And we have done a great job.
They keep saying you won't, that you won't keep.
Oh, yeah, they keep saying, that's another thing.
So
I think you said it last night again. They know that we will. In fact, we're signing the commitment to keep it, and I've already signed the commitment.
Right.
I will never approve anything unless it's got pre-existing conditions. They know that people are protected with pre-existing conditions. They know that. They continuously say, the Democrats, for some reason, they're willing to lie about everything. They lie so much. In that speech, and the things you didn't talk about, that's a lie too, because you have to talk about police and law and order. Somebody said, don't use the words law and order because it's too tough. I said, no, it's about law and order.
Yes.
You know, the police can solve, if you look at New York, we have the greatest police. They have totally been decapitated as to what they can do. They're not allowed to practice their profession properly. It's horrible. Crime up 368% in New York. Nobody ever thought they'd see numbers like this. So with healthcare, we've done a great job. One of the other things I did, I think the future is good. Transparency. I approve transparency. That's bigger than healthcare. The people I had working on it, one of them is like the all-time expert on transparency, a highly respected man, doctor. He said, sir, if you get this approved, this is bigger than healthcare. Transparency, where you can go and negotiate and pick the best doctor.
Explain why that helps people.
Because people will be able to negotiate their prices, which right now they can't. People will be able to get better doctors. You know who it's good for? Good hospitals. By the way, hospitals are against it because it makes them good. Good hospitals and good doctors. It's good for good hospitals. It's the biggest thing maybe in healthcare of anything I'm doing other than drug prices, because I did a favored nations clause the other day so that if Germany's buying a pill for 10 cents and ours costs $2.50, which, we're by far the highest in the world because we're foolish and because we pay middlemen billions and billions of dollars. I did a favored nations clause and a rebate clause. What do I get out of it? I get millions of dollars worth of advertising from the drug companies against me. You must stop Trump. You know what? You know what that means? Prices could go down 60, 70, 80% for prescription drugs. Nobody's ever seen anything like that.
So
and you know what it's called?
Could happen.
It's already done. I've done it. I just did it 2 weeks ago.
But the actual outcome for people.
Well, the consequences for me are tremendous because every time I turn on a television, the drug companies are advertising about how bad I am. But the fact is, somebody should have done it a long time ago. Why is Canada paying 50%? Why of what we do? Why is Germany and why are so many other countries paying a fraction? So now, if they pay low, we get the lowest price. It's called favored nations. Very important. Also, rebates. They're getting massive rebates. Now the rebates go to the drug price and it goes to the people. Nobody ever thought this would be possible. It's all done. And the other thing that's done, very importantly done, I mean, to me, very importantly, you take a look at transparency. Transparency, I don't know, I say it, nobody picks it up. Transparency may be the biggest thing ever done having to do with cost and healthcare.
Well, that's great.
And nobody even talks about it.
Because it's one of those technical things, it sounds a bit complicated, but I think you've made the case.
It's not very complicated.
You've made the case very well. Last on policy, it seems to be a huge issue, a bit like transparency. It's not talked about enough, but it's incredibly important to people, is what Ivanka's working on. It's something I've talked a lot about on the show, which is giving people skills so they can get the jobs that are out there. Right now, it feels like that's more important than ever. Training skills. It's not a particularly widely discussed issue. How do you see that moving forward if you're re-elected?
I see it very important, and you mentioned Ivanka. It's what she likes the best. I've said, darling, it's like she happens to be a very talented person, okay? She's amazingly smart and talented. I said, would you like to do something else or head this or head that? No, Dad, I want to get people to work, and I want to teach them, and I want to get companies to train them. Because when you go, she's gotten the biggest companies. She's created 15 million jobs. 15 million. Now, that was before this came.
Well, the companies created it, but...
That's right. No, but she went to companies that never even thought of it, and she got the biggest Walmart. She went to these big companies. She had a goal of 500,000, and within about a week, she surpassed that goal. But she went to the biggest companies and got them to do training programs, and they would commit to take in 500,000 people, 1 million. I think Walmart, somebody did 1 million people. She's done a fantastic job, but it's called training. Now, they can train much better than we can. I think you would agree. And these companies are training, and it's been a great program. Again, got somewhat stymied by what happened with the...
But is it going to be re-energized?
Yeah, oh, it's going to be totally. They're already doing it. In fact, I've had a meeting on it yesterday. It was a tremendous success. We created tremendous numbers of jobs. One other thing, though, last quarter, the numbers just came out. Over 9 million people got jobs. That's the most in the history of our country in one quarter. So we're coming back very
That's
soon.
interesting. I was skeptical of that whole V-shaped recovery thing, but it really does look encouraging.
And one of the reasons it's working is because we had a very strong foundation.
Yeah.
We built a very strong, if we were weak, if we had that happen and we didn't have that foundation, you'd be 15, 20 years like the Great Depression, which lasted for 18 years, if you think about it. Okay, by the time they got it back, you would have had that. Our foundation was so strong. That's why they hired more than 9 million people in the last 3 months.
I think it's very clear you've got a big majority of the country with you. If you look at all the polls, 80-odd% agree with you when you talk about the need to restore order on the streets, support the police. We get it. This is something I've talked about as well, is that there's another part to it, though. Similar majorities also agree that we need to do more for racial justice and racial equality in this country. It seems to me that when that all came up after the George Floyd protests, you didn't capture that balance. What do you have to say to people who want both law and order and racial justice?
First of all, I think I've done more for the black community than any other president other than perhaps Abraham Lincoln. And I think it's true with criminal justice reform and opportunity zones and all of the things I've done, prison reform. I mean, what I've done is more than anybody else. I don't know if it's being recognized at all, but I've done more than anybody. But and I say maybe Abraham Lincoln, because to be honest with you, I don't even know about that. You know, if you go back into the whole as to why we got into the war, etc. But
in looking ahead, police reform.
I got it, and we were there. We were getting tremendous kudos because the economy was good. We had the lowest African American unemployment ever. Hispanic too, and Asian, and women, and everything. I mean, it was everybody. But we were there. We were actually becoming a unified country. Even Democrats that couldn't stand me were sort of getting along. It was happening. And then we got hit with the virus. We're building it again. We had to close it down. We saved millions of lives by doing it. We're not doing any shutdowns, by the way. But we had to close it down. Saved millions of lives. We would have had 2.5 million instead of the number we have right now, and 1 is too many. But we would have had 2.5 million or in that vicinity if we didn't do what we did. And by the way, and if I didn't put the ban on China coming in, and if I didn't put the ban on Europe coming in. So we did things, but we were ready to rock and roll, and we were seeing unity. I was seeing unity that we had never seen. People were calling me that we're not calling, and I'm talking about Democrats.
Right.
And then we got hit, and we had to go back to work.
But the other thing that hit was this sense in the country after George Floyd, and you spoke very powerfully about how horrible that was, that we need to do more. We need to get that agenda towards more racial justice going. I just want to know what you have to say to people who want to see that.
Well, let me say that we had a great reform bill and working with law enforcement, doing it with, because these are great people.
Yes.
And if they have a bad apple, I mean, everybody does, even in your wonderful industry, you know, they have bad apples. But we had a wonderful, and Tim Scott, who's a fantastic senator from South Carolina, had a bill in that was backed by everybody except the Democrats. They wouldn't let him pass it. And they didn't let him pass it for political reasons, because they like the issue. That bill went a long way to answering your questions, and the Democrats just wouldn't let it get through.
So will you give that a push?
Yeah, I'd give that. Tim is a fantastic guy. The bill is there. We bring it up all the time. Approve the bill. They know it's the right thing to do, but politically, it looks like they're not going to do that. I will say this, though. Had the China virus not come in, I think the whole thing would have been much different.
Interesting.
The George Floyd would have been this would have been a bad guy doing a bad thing to a person, to a man. A horrible thing. And I don't think you would have seen the same results.
I just want to ask you, in a second term, you'll have done the job already for 4 years. What have you learned about doing the job that would make you do it differently, if anything, in the future?
So I started as a non-politician. I was in Washington 17 times in my entire life, and now I've been in Washington, and I know the right people and the wrong people. You know, you have to know the people. I have unbelievable people that I would be appointing to certain very important positions that you would consider very important. And I think that, and I have great people now, I have some really great people. Nobody talks about the great ones, but we have some, you know, we've done what we've done on the military. As an example, we've rebuilt our military. We've done things that nobody could, $2.5 trillion into our military was so depleted. But I would strengthen what we've done, and I would do new things. Space Force, as an example.
Right.
I've done more. I have an interesting distinction that actually a sort of a bad person in terms of doesn't like Republicans or me said Trump is, whether you like him or not, he's done more than he said he was going to do. Like, I never mentioned Space Force in the campaign. We did Space Force. I never mentioned a lot of things. The wall is almost complete. By the end of the year, it'll be just about complete. Having a tremendous, our numbers on the border are phenomenal.
What about the way you do the job? I'll tell you what's behind part of that question. I was just talking to a friend, a big supporter of your policies, the agenda, totally sees that that's what's needed for the country. And I think this represents quite a few people out there, but they say, you know what, there's just, this is the word that was used, too much hullabaloo. It's a great word. Captures some of the things that people say. What about that? If you're re-elected, you've got nothing to prove, you've done it again, can we expect to see a different style from it?
First of all, I understand that 100%, but I haven't been treated fairly.
Right.
I was investigated by a phony deal on Russia. It was a phony deal. I had nothing to do with Russia. No phone calls, no nothing. I had nothing to do with it. And you had to fight that. Then they had a phone call of congratulations to Ukraine. I got impeached. I had to fight that. I have to fight back. If I don't fight back strong, I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you. So it's not like, gee, I'd like it to be calm too. But one thing, I wouldn't have gotten all of these things. I can give you a list that's 4 pages long. Right to try, all of the medical things we've done, even the vaccines. We're almost going to have a vaccine. Somebody else would have taken years to get it. If I had a different attitude, that list would be 1/10 as long as it is.
Interesting.
Nobody has done what we've done.
So you think it goes with the territory of getting things done, to have that?
I think so. I mean, I'd like to be nice and say, gee, if you could do it, I'd like you to. If I changed my attitude, I wouldn't get nearly as many things done. It's one of those things. Some people like it, some people don't. What can I say?
All right, so I'm dying to ask you, they're going to kick me out of here in a second, but I'm dying to ask you this question. Have you seen the videos that this comedian has been making, Sarah Cooper, where she takes your speeches and she performs them? I just wondered if you've seen that.
I have not, no. I'd like to see them. Are they good or bad?
I think you'd find them very entertaining.
Okay, good.
I think a lot of people would enjoy watching this person interview you, and their heads would explode because she takes your voice and performs it.
I'd like to see.
And I was just curious whether you'd seen it.
I mean, if you say they're positive, I'd like to look. If they're not positive.
She doesn't mean it to be positive,
I see.
But I think you might enjoy it.
Well, I'll have to check it out.
Well, we've got the convention coming up next week. Just final message. What do you want people to think as they're watching the contrast with the Democrats? What's the big point you want to leave people with?
Our country has unbelievable potential. We're going to have the strongest economy we've ever had next year. We're going to do additional tax cuts as opposed to massive tax increases, which is going to lead us into a depression, what they want to do. What they want to do will lead us into a depression. 401k stocks, everything's going to go right down the tubes. We're doing additional tax cuts. We are going to have one of the best economies next year, and within 2 years, we'll have the greatest economy we've ever had. Better even than prior to the China virus coming in. We have tremendous potential in this country. And the beauty is we've now rebuilt our military. We've done so much, so many things that I don't have to do, I just have to maintain. But we are going to have the strongest economy we've ever had, and that includes what we just left, which was the best to this point in our history.
There we are, something to look forward to. Mr. President, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Really
Steve.
appreciate it.
Great honor, thank you.